That night, he wished to sleep, but his restless thoughts kept him awake. In a fleeting moment he saw himself once more in the figure of his youthful self. At times he would glimpse himself wandering the shadowed recesses of the palace, or see himself once more beneath the vast, starlit. And yet he lingered in the palace until the time came for his name to be entered into the rolls of the garrison. The great Achaemenid commander, a mentor to many, looked upon him with favor, as though fate had chosen him. They sent him forth to claim the armor and arms destined for a warrior of his kind. He came upon it at last, his golden armor, gleaming in silence, awaiting its bearer. He clad himself in the golden armor, as destiny drew near. Now, standing before the mirror, he sees his dual nature unveiled, the face of virtue, and the face of darkness. Yet he chose the way of righteousness, that he might lay down his life for the land he called home. Thus began the training, the forging of body, mind, and spirit. Day by day, he grew, in strength, in skill, and in the wisdom of war. Step by step, his path led him to the gates of the great palace of Parse. He rose through the ranks day by day and went from being a soldier to becoming a commander. He took his place as a sentinel within the sacred halls of the Palacia, until the day he was called to enter the sacred presence of the king. Until one day, the commander called for him. He rose day by day, climbing from soldier to commander, until the day the commander called his name and made him the leader of a unit. Leading his soldiers towards the battlefield, it was his first battle as a commander. They fought in battles and emerged victorious. By order of King Cyrus the Great, they celebrated after each victory. He gazed upon the heavens, and with hope in his heart, a radiant smile adorned his face, echoing the boundless promise of the skies. Yet, beneath that radiant smile, a hidden sorrow lingered, veiled within the depths of his hopeful gaze upon the boundless skies. Yet, beneath that radiant smile, a hidden sorrow lingered, veiled within the depths of his hopeful gaze upon the boundless skies, its only balm the solace of wine. Yet, beneath that radiant smile, a hidden sorrow lingered, veiled within the depths of his hopeful gaze upon the boundless skies, its truest balm not wine, but another solace yet unspoken. Rather, it was the burning furnace of war, where courage and sacrifice paved the way to salvation. Sword and armor, not merely a shield for his body, had become the bulwark and strength of his heart. He stood ever poised for the command to charge, valiant and steadfast, with a spirit primed for battle. In the crucible of battle, he fought fearless and bold, with a heart as steadfast as steel. Within the ranks of the army, he ascended the steps of glory with unwavering courage and resolve. Days passed, and with each dawn, he grew wiser. Now, in the 35th spring of his life, he stood as resolute as ever. In his 40th spring, he had grown bolder and braver, with a spirit that knew naught but the fire of battle and unyielding resolve. In his 45th spring, he remained unyielding, never shying from the fray of hand-to-hand combat, his heart still ablaze with the fire of courage. At last the fated day of battle against the evil one arrived, a day when destiny would be forged in the sky turned blood red, as if the heavens themselves had risen to witness the coming battle. It was the moment of confrontation, the fearsome demon Vortagar facing the brave and fearless commander, in a clash that shook both earth and sky. Both, thirsting for victory and burning with fury, stormed toward each other like raging tempests. Vortagar let out a terrifying roar, and flames burst from his mouth as if the inferno itself raged within him. In the fury of battle, they wielded every weapon at their disposal, even their iron fists, striking like hammers upon each other's bodies. The soldiers of both armies watched in dread and awe, their breaths held, witnessing a battle that seemed beyond the realm of mortals. Time and again, both warriors were cast to the ground, yet each time they rose like unshaken mountains, unyielding and resolute. Fire and blood filled the air, and their scorching presence overwhelmed the soldiers with a deep and unending fear. At times, amid the chaos of battle, the two warriors locked eyes, a gaze burning with hatred, resolve, and unbreakable courage. Vortigern twisted his form in a desperate bid for victory, transforming into monstrous shapes to strike fear into the heart of his foe, face to face, wounded and weary, yet proud and brave. Standing in the fire, Vortigern had unleashed, fearless and unshaken. Vortigern fought with claws and fangs, savage and primal. The commander met him with a gleaming shield and a blade sharp as vengeance. Vortigern, eyes gleaming with a feral light, burning with untamed fury. Sparks of fire burst forth as the sword clashed against Vortigern's bones and fangs. Vortigern twisted into every shape imaginable, bending the bounds of form itself, desperate to claim victory on the battlefield. He grew so immense that he stood like a towering mountain before the commander. At times, like a demon bearing thousands of blades aimed to tear through his flesh. Dark and furious. Fear had gripped the soldiers tightly. The commanders were engaged fiercely in battle, or silent spectators of the fight. Some commanders watched anxiously, burdened by the uncertainty of the battle's outcome. Vortigern, enraged by his merciless wounds, charged forward with relentless fury. The commander was weary and hope had begun to fade from his eyes. The assaults raged on, ceaseless and unforgiving. Vortigern spewed the fire of his fury from his mouth, a blazing storm of wrath. With a sudden, monstrous shift of form, he struck the commander with a vicious wound. He rose from the earth slowly, defiantly, as if gravity itself could no longer hold him down. The warriors stood watchful, their eyes sharp, awaiting the fated moment to strike and turn the tide. Ger marveled at the fierce courage of the commanders of the land of Iran. Amidst the chaos, the commander clashed not only with Vortigern, but with the enemy forces that surged around him. But Vortigern gave no quarter, his onslaught was relentless, a storm without end. Vortigern, desperate for victory, turned to sorcery, unleashing dark magic to tip the scales in his favor. The commanders, witnessing this dark power, felt a chill of fear creep into their very bones. On one side stood their commander, valiant and mighty, on the other, Vortigern, a fearsome, powerful, and cunning beast. Even the enemy soldiers stood in awe of the commander's unwavering courage and valor. On one side courage, valor, and a sword forged in resolve, on the other rage, sorcery, and claws wreathed in fire. Amid flames and ash, the commander stood like a pillar of unshaken will, no tremor in his hands, no doubt in his gaze, as if endurance itself had taken form within the storm. He ran swift as the wind through a battlefield ablaze. Was it a strategy carved in the fire of his mind, or the reckless charge of a soul with nothing left to lose? With a roar that shook the battlefield, he soared into the heavens like a thunderbolt loosed from the hand of destiny itself. With the force of a rising tempest, he hurled himself at Vortigern, his sword a blazing arc of vengeance, crashing down with the weight of 1,000 battles. Both warriors struck the earth with thunderous force, yet the commander's leap was a soaring storm, descending like a vengeful god amidst the enemy ranks, shaking the very soil beneath their trembling feet. Vortigern's roar shattered the silence of the cosmos, a deafening cry that split the skies and cracked the very bones of the earth beneath him. Yet the commander, though struck and bleeding, stood unyielding, each wound a testament to his unbreakable a spirit forged in the crucible of war. With blood on his hands and fire in his eyes, the commander grasped his fallen blade, raising it from the earth like a relic of glory, reborn to strike once more. He cast his gaze upon Vortigern, and his horrid eyes, burning like twin embers, unshaken before the storm of darkness that loomed before him. He raised his sword high, its edge catching the light like a beacon of defiance, a silent vow to end the darkness before him. But Vortigern, broken and beaten, pleaded for mercy, his voice a trembling echo, begging forgiveness from the very hand he had sought to destroy. The commander, steadfast yet merciful, granted him pardon, and with a voice like thunder tempered by wisdom, ordered him to retreat from the field of battle. He turned his back to the enemy host, his stride unwavering as he walked toward his own legion, A silent titan returning from the heart of chaos. He stood before his army proud and resplendent like a living banner of victory, forged in fire and crowned by honor. But suddenly, a deadly flame surged toward him wild and vengeful, as if the very wrath of the underworld had broken free to strike him down. He saw it. Vortiger, treacherous even in defeat, had unleashed the flame. Despite the mercy he had been granted, but this time, mercy was a forgotten ghost. Only wrath burned fierce and unrelenting in his heart. This time, Vortiger could no longer move, broken, spent, and crushed beneath the weight of his own treachery. The commander, triumphant and unyielding, placed his foot upon Vortiger's still living corpse, a symbol of victory etched in fire and blood. With solemn fury, he struck, severing Vortiger's head. The clash of his blade against the beast's bones rang out like iron meeting iron, echoing across the battlefield like a final judgment. The commanders of the mighty Achaemenid host cried out in triumph, their voices rising like thunder over the battlefield, a chorus of glory for their sovereign and steel. Even those commanders who had once feared their leader's fall now raised their voices in awe, humbled by his victory, and exalted by the light he had kindled in the heart of darkness. The commander gazed upon his generals and soldiers, his eyes fierce yet proud, carrying the weight of battle and the fire of undying loyalty. But the enemy commanders stood in silence, defeated not only in battle, but in spirit, their pride crumbling before the might and honor of the one who had vanquished their champion. With solemn grandeur, the commander cleansed his sword, each motion a ritual of honor, as if wiping away not just blood, but the memory of darkness conquered. They stood watch until dawn, vigilant and unyielding, ensuring no betrayal would rise again beneath the shroud of night. At the break of dawn, nothing remained upon the battlefield but lifeless corpses and shattered standards, solemn relics of a night drenched in fire, blood, and glory. The commander commanded his soldiers to gather the fallen warriors of Iran from the battlefield, while crows circled above, drawn to the abandoned corpses like harbingers of death's lingering shadow. The sorrow of losing Iran's brave sons dimmed the brightness of victory like a shadow cast upon a rising sun, reminding all that triumph never comes without a price. They marched toward the command tent, silent and solemn, their steps echoing the weight of both glory and grief. At times, sorrow outweighed joy like a heavy cloak draped over their triumph, reminding them that even victory bears the scars of loss. They began preparing for the celebration of victory, though weary and battle-worn, their hearts kindled with pride, ready to honor the triumph won in blood and fire. That night, they danced and rejoiced, warriors shedding the weight of battle in the firelight, their songs rising like flames to the heavens, a tribute to victory hard-earned. At dawn, they set forth toward the city of Parsay, their banners catching the morning light, a proud procession of heroes returning from the heart of war. The army arrived at the city in perfect order, a majestic tide of discipline and pride, flowing through the gates of Parsay like a living monument to honor and strength. The first to welcome them were the children, rushing forth with eyes wide in wonder, their laughter like sunlight breaking through the shadows of war. The second wave were the women and daughters of Persia, graceful and radiant, adorned in flowing garments, their presence like blossoms blooming after a long and bitter storm. They reached the royal palace, its towering columns gleaming in the sun, as if the very stones rejoiced in the return of their victorious warriors. The commander granted them leave, commanding the warriors to lay down their arms and return to their families, their hearts finally finding rest after the tempest of battle. And he himself retreated toward the healer's tent, seeking solace in wine to soothe the burning wounds etched deep by the fury of war. After the cleansing embrace of the bath, he made his way toward the grand celebration, refreshed, resolute, and cloaked in the dignity of a warrior who had faced the storm and returned triumphant. Though the bath and blade had returned his visage to that of a man of 45, within he remained an old warrior, grim, weary, and marked by the weight of countless battles. But it did not matter, for he was a son of Iran, and a servant of the great King Cyrus. And so, he smiled just faintly and walked on through the corridor, his steps steady, his purpose unshaken. His steps were slow and steady, each one echoing with the weight of duty, carved by time and tempered by the fire of unyielding resolve. He arrived at the grand entrance hall of the palace, its vastness embracing him like the silent witness of kings and legends long past. The palace guards stood solemn along the corridor's length, while the walls bore majestic frescoes and grandeur, revealing the glory of a timeless empire. A noble commander stepped forward to greet him, offering guidance with a respectful bow, leading the way through the halls of power and honor. In the great hall, all were lost in revelry and dance, celebrating victory with joyous abandon beneath glittering chandeliers and the watchful eyes of history. The commander stood before King Cyrus the Great, an embodiment of reverence and triumph. The hall seemed to hold its breath as the sovereign's majestic presence radiated with the timeless glory of an empire that spanned continents. Draped in regal robes woven with gold and lapis lazuli, Cyrus's gaze was both fierce and wise, a living monument to justice and destiny. Every word the commander spoke echoed like a sacred decree, honoring the king who had forged Persia's destiny with unwavering vision and boundless strength. In that moment, the very air shimmered with the weight of history, and the commander bowed deeply, humbled before the immortal greatness of Cyrus the Great. Cyrus,